Hello pond people, Frogopodus here, and today we will be diving into layer 3 of my bad movie Iceberg. This layer is called, wow, that's a lot of crap, but at least I get to talk about Battlefield Earth. That's at the end though. Before then, I have to run my self-imposed gauntlet of garbage, starting with Ready Player One. I feel kind of guilty saying that Ready Player One is one of the worst books I've ever read, if not the worst, because it was given to me as a gift. But I do hope the relative that got it for me knows that I found it incredibly entertaining for how bad it was, but I was still entertained. In its defense, I did genuinely think it was this clever satire for the first few chapters. It seems like it was setting up this message about overconsumption and how people engage with art on a purely surface level, while the real world burns around them. But if this was the message they were trying to get across, they did a really bad job at it. Wade Watts, our protagonist, is incredibly unlikable and a complete Mary Sue who just happens to always have the right thing at the right time. And we get the absolute joy of reading him regurgitate random pop culture trivia to us, which I guess makes up for the lack of originality and interesting ideas from the author. What Ernest Cline does contribute to his own story is a half-baked universe and ham-fisted social commentary. But at least the book is interesting to talk about, even if it's not for the reasons Clive intended. The movie is as bland as cornflakes. Wade is now boring, and the story has been dumbed down even more to fit the movie's runtime. In the book, getting these keys for the scavenger hunt took a lot of time and research. And while that time and research was just him once again regurgitating pop trivia to us, at least it seemed like this is something that would be super complicated to complete. In the movie though, Wade gets these keys by driving backwards. He gets the second key by going to the Overlook Hotel. Remember The Shining? Wish you were watching that instead? And much like in the book, he wins by happening to have the right thing at the right time, as he has a quarter that gives him an extra life after it seems like all was lost. But at least it all looks nice, and you can point at pop culture characters you know. This movie is the equivalent of smashing action figures together. The media I think we're meant to be celebrating is stripped of any soul and meaning because it's just a bunch of nerds running around as those characters. It's a movie about shallow media consumption, but everyone's cheering it on. Our next movie is Rootwood, and it's on here because it took me until near the end to even remember that I had watched it before. The characters and story are just that forgettable. Two paranormal podcasters are offered the chance to film a documentary about Rootwood by people that seem very legitimate. Did I mention that the guy, William, made this deal without the other host, Jessica's knowledge? Jessica also brings her friend Erin because they asked her to bring a third person, which also just sounds super non-suspicious. You'll also notice that this movie mixes regular filming with found footage, and it does it very poorly. Nothing much happens until the first night. They just kinda talk, and then Will gets some B footage. There's a reason I forgot this movie existed. That night, they start hearing strange noises, but since this is only the first night, it's going to be a fake-out jump scare. But then they eventually come across something that is actually scary, a message written in blood, and they don't leave. They even confirm that it's blood, and they just keep filming.
Oh my god. That's blood.
Oh my god.
They find some more stuff that should really give them the signal to just head on out. Until the second night where they hear the noises again, Erin decides to be kind of smart and decides to leave. But it's the middle of the night and she doesn't know where she is.
Shut up, William. I'll order a ride share. Okay, you two can enjoy your spooky wooky ghost hunting shit on your own. Okay, I'm done. I'm splitting.
So she dies, and then we're this left of William and Jessica, and William is a charisma vacuum, so it gets pretty boring from here. And it stays that way until finally the monster shows up. Yay! And oh no, William's gone missing. Ah, gee whiz. Now that we're near the end, it's finally dawned on me that I had watched this before. The part I remember is the main girl, after being chased around and tormented by this monster thing, and she notices that she is being filmed by somebody else. So she presumes that this is all a prank, but it's not. The monster kidnaps her, and we find out that the people that hired them to make this documentary are in fact evil and have been making a separate movie filming them, killing them off, and tormenting them. And the monster isn't even a monster. It's just some guy in a suit, and now they're gonna kill her for real. So this guy rips out her intestines with his mouth. I think that's what's happening, but it just looks like he's eating a sausage. But in a final twist, it turns out that the monster was real, and it kills the people who were making this movie. We also find out in a mid-credit scene that William was in on it the whole time. Did he kill Jessica, I guess? Then what was the other guy doing? Were there two monsters running around? You know what? I don't care. That last entry was a bit short, so here's a special bonus entry. Run would easily be the worst invasion film I've seen in quite a while if it wasn't for the fact that World of Worlds also exists. It gets your hopes up at the beginning because you see this character, who we'll learn is called Melissa, running covered in green goo and seemingly having gone through some serious shit. Wow, I wonder what led up to this. The movie starts with Melissa being very nervous on her wedding day and just deciding to not get married. And this seems like a very expensive wedding, so that sucks for a lot of people. Especially the groom. During the fallout of all of this, she decides to go to an Airbnb with her friends to get away from it all and try to sort herself out. There is a lot of character stuff and story that goes along with all of this, but it's so bland that I'm just going to skip right ahead to the aliens. That happens about 36 minutes in. Upon hearing that aliens are invading Earth, they do the sensible thing and all go to get in their car and leave. But they remember that their friend Jenny went somewhere to make a call, so they go look for Jenny.
There's metal flying balls coming out of the sky. Gotta love some flying balls. Leave it up to Donnie to talk about some damn balls at a time like this.
And oh shit, she's dead. So they all run back into the house. Then Brittany was like, oh, I have a gun in the car, let me go get it. And oh no, Brittany's dead. So now they're just stuck in the house. That night, her fiance Andre showed up to check on her or win her love back. I'm gonna be real, I don't really remember. And Ronald, who's one of their cousins or her cousin, and this poor guy that drove them there just gets attacked and killed by aliens. They heard about the alien invasion while driving there, but they just didn't believe it. And look what happened. Avery's dead. Rest in peace, Avery. They get these news reports that talk to them about the aliens and what's happening around the world. It is specifically said right at the start that they are apparently weak to smartphone LED lights. Also that they won't enter buildings unless they feel threatened, which is very nice of them. But most importantly, about halfway through the movie, we learn that you can kill them by shooting them in the head.
Sources are saying the only way to kill these things is to shoot them in the head. Their bodies are thick as armor.
They also react to movement and sound and are really fast and strong and smart. They decided to put in a scene where they're interviewing just some random guy on the street who's talking and gesturing loudly and then he gets murdered? Okay. So by all means, this seems like our characters can just stay in the house and have a little party. The aliens won't come inside, they just told us that. I think a lot of people will be fine if they just stay indoors and wait for the military to handle it, right? I guess not, because the president comes on to tell everybody that the aliens have cut out the power, I guess to the whole friggin' world, and that they no longer have the LED lights because they can't charge the batteries. There's just no way to get these LED lights working. No way at all. Phones were the only answer, and now there's no way to fight them off, even though we just heard earlier that you can shoot them in the head. Who knows? Maybe there was a throwaway piece of dialogue or a little text that I didn't see that explained why they can't just do this. Maybe my mind had just turned to mush by that point. So the logical conclusion that the president and apparently other world governments have unanimously agreed on is to do airstrikes on major cities and rebuild afterwards. Now they can try to escape because there is a car outside they can all get in and drive off from. But those super buff Chad aliens are out there and they won't stand a chance. So they have to come up with an idea that involves distracting them to get to the car. And what they're going to do that is they're going to lure all the aliens inside the house where they've set up explosives so they can blow them up. This plan fails almost immediately. The aliens are nice enough to let the last two survivors say goodbye to each other before the guy just decides to sacrifice himself so he won't slow her down and runs inside to blow up the house. Her escape ends immediately also, so the guy just kind of dies for nothing. Even after the explosion, an alien just like jumps out of the house and flips her car. And now she has to run. The alien is able to catch up to her and she shoots it in the head because a gun was in the car and it falls over and dies. She was able to do something that apparently the military, tons of trained professionals, and countless gun owners couldn't. Now we're at that scene you saw at the beginning of the movie. You know, the one that made you think that this might be an interesting film. And the movie ends pretty much right after what we saw. She presumably just dies in the airstrike. That's it. Thankfully, our next movie was clearly written by people, but what they were on, I'm not sure. Now, no one forced me to watch Evil Bong, but sometimes it's this late at night and you're scrolling through Tubi looking for something to watch, and that little devil on your shoulder wins. I hate to say it, but Evil Bong is just kind of lame. Full Moon Pictures can make some really fun stuff, and I've always liked their style, but there's just not a lot going here. A bunch of college stoners get this funky looking bong and it starts killing them in their dreams like Freddy Krueger. But here they are sent to a strip club and the strippers kill them through their increasingly strange, I'm gonna call them murder bras, which sounds great, but it gets pretty old pretty fast and it's rather underwhelming. We do get to see Chong attack the bong with a chainsaw though, so that's pretty cool. Maybe this picks up in one of its several sequels. Do you want me to watch those? I'll do it. I don't even know what shame is. Unfortunately, I didn't get much enjoyment out of this next movie, The Comedy. The Comedy is a movie where Swanson, played by Tim Heidecker, dicks around with his friends for a while, and then dicks around on his own for a while. But then there will be scenes where the camera gets closer on him, or it gets a bit slower, and either the music stops or changes, and that's when you know it's supposed to be deep. I like Tim Heidecker and even a lot of the people that star in this, so making me hate every minute of it is quite the feat. I do appreciate what it's going for. He does have this rich trust fund guy who's like failed at life. He's in his late 30s. He doesn't know what he's going to do. And his dad's dying, so he's going to get a shit ton of money, and that's not going to help him motivate himself. And in that regard, it succeeds. I just didn't like anybody or anything in this, so you're just kind of stuck watching these people be boring dicks. And I get that that's the point, and I actually really enjoy movies like this, usually, but this just didn't do it for me. My reaction when watching your movies shouldn't be wanting to turn it off and do the dishes. To the movie's credit, the acting is very good and the cinematography is great. There is a good chance that there is something more to the movie that I'm just not getting, or it might just be entirely up its own ass. Considering my feelings about it have not changed even upon a second viewing, I'm going towards the latter. One bag of popcorn. Let's talk about something a little more interesting. Let's talk about Mothman. There's a lot of Mothman movies, which is understandable because he's pretty cool, but not all of them are good. Actually, but a lot of them aren't good. Really, I suggest reading a book on him or watching Mothman Prophecies. That was pretty good. Maybe a documentary. But if you insist on watching a bad Mothman movie, may I suggest 2010's sci-fi original, Mothman. In this movie, we see a group of, I think these are teenagers, young adults. You know what, the jury's out on that. They're all hanging out at the old creek, but one of them had to bring their annoying younger brother along. Look at him being a kid. What a buzzkill. That night, they decide to spook him by telling him the story about the Mothman before going for a drunken swim. I mean, they only had one beer, but I digress. For some reason, they think the greatest prank ever to pull is to just start pulling this kid underwater and telling him, oh no, the Mothman's trying to get you. Now, you might be surprised to hear that pulling somebody underwater a bunch of times might make them drown. They try to save him. That doesn't seem to be working, so instead, they cover it up by saying he fell and hit his head. To prove that he hit his head, they just start hitting his head with a rock. They all take turns hitting his head with a rock, so they're all culpable if caught, which I'm pretty soundproof. I don't know. I don't see any issues here. It's now 10 years later, and oh my god, it's Moth Fest. Hell yeah. They're having this festival because they live in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, home of the Mothman. The one kind of smart girl, Catherine, is now a journalist and is back in town to do an article on Mothman and its history, which leads her to reunite with her old friends, which she shares that horrible secret with. It took 10 years, but Mothman is here to punish them for killing that poor kid. It doesn't take long before we see him take his first victim, and here he is. Here's the Mothman. Soak it in. I could probably descend the century with this picture. Look at this thing. Being a sci-fi original, all the deaths are very lame. And the best thing about this movie is that there's this blind guy who's had to deal with Mothman before, and we get his whole backstory. He's easily the best part of the film. The second half of the movie leans just enough into very fun stupidity that I'd say it's good for a bad movie night.
But Minnie needs to close up shop for the day.
But I can't really recommend these next movies. These next 3 movies are by the same person, BC14. I actually made a whole video on them, but there's no way I couldn't put them on this iceberg, and I'll talk about them again. Bigfoot vs. Megalodon 1 and 2, along with Trump vs. the Illuminati, are part of a franchise that spans 10 movies, and they're all connected. Bigfoot vs. Megalodon isn't about Bigfoot fighting Megalodon or even interacting with Megalodon. It is about thousands of years in the future where the Earth is now uninhabitable and the remaining humans with their allies fight a war against the Archons, which are led by reptilian Joseph Stalin and alien Victor Crowley. We have aliens and space Nazis and clones of historical figures for some reason. And this all sounds pretty crazy, but it isn't. It's actually very boring. This is a special kind of awful. I don't think I've ever experienced something quite like this. These movies, especially Bigfoot vs. Megalodon, is just characters standing around with very little motion talking exposition to each other. And if you just didn't have your sound on or weren't paying attention, you would think scenes are repeating because they are. They reuse scenes all the time and just put in different dialogue. And I wasn't kidding when I said Bigfoot vs. Megalodon does not have them interacting or fighting in any way. They capture Megalodon and he stands in a cell and tells you exposition. Also, about a lot of the cast being clones of historical figures, they're mostly in spacesuits that you can't see their face in, so I'm not sure why they even did this. Like, this is Van Helsing. Does he do anything that would remind you of Van Helsing? Not really. But I do have to give them some credit. In Bigfoot vs. Megalodon 2, not only do we see movement, but they actually fight each other. And in Trump vs. the Illuminati, we actually see his face, and we get facial movement. He also does a dance. If you're wondering, in this case, he is a clone made by China that escaped Earth's destruction, and he doesn't have much to do with his original self, which he seems to very much dislike. Also, he literally goes to hell to bargain with Satan to stop Victor Crowley from doing some Satan ritual shit. You might be surprised to hear that just like Bigfoot versus Megalodon, it's very boring. There's nothing to really get from these movies. There's nothing so bad it's good in here or really that funny. You're better off pretty much watching any other versus film you can find. On to our next film, which actually has a lot in common with the previous ones because they're both horrible to look at. What do I say about Cats that hasn't already been said? It's a visual nightmare with some very bizarre performances. Though I don't really want to harp on the VFX artists too much because they were just trying to make this while dealing with a director that clearly doesn't understand how their job worked. Like, look at these freaking cats. They used a similar thing in What We Do in the Shadows, but that was a sight gag. Did you watch that Basement Jaxx video and not realize that it's supposed to be horrifying? And then you have these weird sets and dancing roaches and these tiny mice with children's faces and James Gordon being a goddamn hack. Then there's the fact that there's such a waste of talent here. Some of the singing and dancing here is really good. Jennifer Hudson's rendition of Memory is fantastic. Unfortunately, a lot of this gets drowned out in this how ridiculous everything looks. It's just a terrible, terrible movie. But it is also one of my favorite movie-going experiences ever. This movie came out right before we all had to banish ourselves to the shadow realm, and it was almost prophetic in that sense. Being in a theater with a bunch of people laughing and singing was unforgettable. Little did we know that it would be years before we could do that again. It was delightful. The shocked laughter we all shared when Judi Dench came on screen will stay with me forever. Cats is a movie you have to experience with others. There's no other way to watch it, and there is nothing else like it for better or worse. We're finally here. We've survived the gauntlet of garbage, and we're on the last part of this layer. I get to talk about Battlefield Earth, my favorite bad movie of all time. Everything from the production history to the film itself is a wonderfully stupid disaster. Even the book it's based on was written by L. Ron Hubbard when he was hiding away from lawsuits. Then we have budget cuts, Fox dropping out. A lot of studios didn't want to make this because they were worried it would be used as a recruitment tool to get people into Scientology. Travolta said that that would never happen, and then he totally did use it to do that. And also his salary taking up a big chunk of the budget. Like, this originally had a budget of like 100 mil, but then Fox, after they dropped out, they had to go with Franchise Pictures, and they lied to the investors telling them that the budget was 75 mil, but it wasn't. It was closer to like 40. Franchise Pictures already wasn't in a good place, so this stupid attempt at fraud, along with the movie bombing, killed the company. It went bankrupt. Who knew getting funding for a movie based on a book written by a cult leader would be so hard? But with all that being said, with the fraud and the lower production costs and Travolta being a diva, what did we end up getting? Well, what we ended up getting was a sci-fi failure of epic proportions. Battlefield Earth is about Turl, played by John Travolta, being really bad at his job. So bad, in fact, that it leads to the destruction of his home planet. Right off the bat, Travolta makes this movie. I mean, it was literally his idea, but also because his performance is amazing. He's such a great antagonist. He's so stupid. What starts off the domino effect of his home planet eventually being blown up is that his bosses come to see him and let him know that his current contract on Earth as chief security officer is going to be extended to 50 cycles with endless options for renewal. But Turl didn't spend years in the academy to be stuck doing this shit, so he hatches a plan of his subordinate and best friend, Kerr. Kerr has received information that there's a gold vein and that they're gonna be rich. Rich, I tell ya! Of course, they just can't go there and mine it, and they're not gonna let anyone else know that there's gold nearby, so they're gonna train man-animals to do it. I haven't talked about the man-animals yet. They're like the humans from Planet of the Apes. Hubbard basically this rips the humans from Planet of the Apes. I also need to take this chance to talk about the very strange editing and filmmaking going on here. They use Dutch angles all the time, and they will just put in slow-mo even if it doesn't make sense for there to be slow-mo. I don't know if it was because they're the director, but all the acting from the humans is terrible. It's very wooden. We're going to be focusing on one particular man-animal called Johnny Goodboy Tyler, who's super smart and special. Because he's so super smart and special, Turl decides to strap him to a machine so he can literally beam knowledge into his brain, so then Johnny will know how to use the equipment to mine the gold ore. Turl just leaves him alone with this knowledge machine. Of course he's going to use it to his advantage so he can just have a big brain and use it to train the other man animals to figure out how to escape. Also, just pointing it out, they use a screen wipe all the time. Check this out. Screen wipe, screen wipe, screen wipe. I wonder if they're heavily inspired by anything. A lot of people have pointed out how nothing makes sense from a realistic standpoint, but I just think that adds to the comedy. Johnny and the other man animals are able to very easily trick Turl. Like, a big part of the plot involves them getting other man animals to also help them out, so when Turl's checking in on them through surveillance, he'll think they're still there instead of going off to find other things. That other thing being going to Fort Knox. God, I love this movie so much. Everything they could possibly need to mount a rebellion against the Cyclos is just right there in that area. There's even a nuclear bomb. And everything still works. They even find flight simulators so they can train themselves, and jets they can fly. When Turl comes back in person for the gold, Johnny hands him gold bars and says that they took the time to smelt them for him. Now listen, I know Turl is supposed to be greedy and stupid, but I'm starting to think he didn't graduate from that academy without his parents giving them a very generous donation. To add on to Turl's stupidity, him and Kerr are constantly trying to screw each other over, so I'm not sure why he would think he would have any help in his plan. This also gives us one of the best scenes in the movie.
Well, hell, it could even be our friendly bartender!
So far, Turl has given a man-animal limitless knowledge, screwed over the one person who might be able to help him, lied to a bunch of people, and half-assed his own scheme. Let's see how this works out for him. With everything they need, the man-animals mount their rebellion, and they're smashing windows, and they're flying jets everywhere, and it all looks incredibly cheap. Oh yeah, Turl gets his arm blown off and it looks really goofy. During all of this, Mickey, this is Mickey by the way, is just standing around holding a nuclear bomb waiting to be teleported to the Cyclos planet. Don't worry about the moral implications here, he volunteered. So he gets teleported, and because their entire planet is made out of methane gas, this means that their whole planet blows up. Boy, I hope somebody gets fired over that blunder. In the end, they put Turl in a cell, and they surround him with gold for the irony of it. And look at this final shot before the movie ends. Dear God. I really want you to experience and enjoy this movie for yourself, and I implore you to go find it and watch it. Get everybody you know and get them to watch it with you. Just watch John Travolta chew the scenery, it's great. And with that, I end layer 3. Next is the final layer. We're at the bottom, before the mystery layer, and what horrors await on that one. Thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe, or leave a little comment. Either way, I'm just happy you stopped by, and stay jellical, man animals. I